The sky over Earth shimmered with unnatural light as the Ridathar mothership descended. It was a colossal, intimidating craft that blotted out the sun as it hovered above the meeting site. Humanity's first contact with an alien species wasn't a surprise. The Ridathar had been observing Earth for years, but the moment still held an awe that couldn't be denied. Government officials, military leaders, and scientists stood in anticipation, watching as the alien diplomats exited their ship. The Ridathar were an imposing species, towering over the humans who awaited them. Their skin was a deep, iridescent green, covered in scales that caught the light like polished metal. Thick, muscular limbs moved with effortless strength, and their sharp, yellow eyes scanned the humans with disdain. General Malgar, their leader, stepped forward with a sneer. His armor clinked with each movement, a clear reminder of the warrior culture they came from. Earth's diplomats greeted them with cautious optimism, offering gifts and initiating conversations of peace. As part of this cultural exchange, they introduced the concept of human sports, a proud tradition of physical and mental competition, embodying teamwork, discipline, and skill. General Malgar's lip curled in contempt as he looked over the holographic displays showing humans playing soccer, rugby, and martial arts. His warriors shared quiet laughter among themselves. "These games," Malgar said, his voice a deep, guttural growl, "are what you consider tests of strength? These are mere distractions for the weak." Earth's representatives stood stiffly, sensing the growing tension. One of them, a former Olympian, spoke up, explaining that sports on Earth weren't just games but vital traditions that showcased human endurance, strategy, and resolve. He emphasized the extreme dedication of athletes, comparing their physical prowess to warriors. Malgar's laughter echoed, cold and dismissive. "You're soft, all of you. My warriors would crush your so-called champions without breaking a sweat. But if this is the best your world has to offer, we will humor you. Let us see these sports of yours. Perhaps they will provide some amusement before we tire of this world." His condescending tone left little room for negotiation, but Earth had no choice but to agree. If the Ridathar wanted to compete in human sports, it was better to allow them than provoke outright conflict. Still, there was a silent hope among Earth's leaders that the aliens' arrogance might be their downfall. As the Ridathar returned to their ship, Malgar shot one last look at the gathered humans. "Prepare your champions," he said, almost mockingly. "We will see what your frail species is truly made of." The ship lifted off, and the meeting ended in an uneasy silence. The humans left behind knew that this friendly competition would be anything but. The Ridathar weren't here for games. They were here to prove their superiority and stake a claim on Earth. And in their eyes, humanity was already losing. The Ridathar warriors stood on the field, towering over Earth's finest athletes. Their laughter still echoed from earlier as they prepared to participate in what they viewed as nothing more than a trivial exhibition. The first game, Rugby, chosen for its brutal physicality and demand for teamwork. Earth's athletes knew it well, but the Ridathar, arrogant and dismissive, saw it only as a primitive struggle. As the whistle blew, the match began. The Ridathar immediately showcased their raw strength, plowing through the human players like they were made of paper. A Ridathar player grabbed the ball and sprinted forward, easily dodging tackles with his alien agility. They scored within minutes, their laughter booming across the field. But the human team didn't falter. They had expected this, expected to be overpowered physically. What the Ridathar failed to understand was that human sports weren't just about strength. Rugby required strategy, coordination, and resilience. The humans regrouped, tightening their defense, using their agility and knowledge of the game to slowly push back. As the match wore on, the Ridathar warriors began to show the first signs of strain. Their enormous strength was an asset, but they weren't used to Earth's relentless style of play. The humans kept coming, tackling again and again, forcing the Ridathar to burn energy faster than expected. A human player landed a solid hit on one of the Ridathar, sending him to the ground, winded. For the first time, there was silence from the alien side of the field. The game ended with the Ridathar victorious, but barely. They had won through brute force, but their mocking laughter had faded. A few Ridathar were limping, others breathing heavily, things they hadn't anticipated. Following rugby came other sports. Wrestling, where a smaller human wrestler outlasted his Ridathar opponent by exploiting his weight against him. Football, where speed and tactics turned into an even match. Each game exposed more weaknesses in the Ridathar's overconfidence. By the end of the day, a new tension filled the air. The Ridathar had expected to crush humanity with ease, yet here they were, bruised and exhausted. For the first time, doubt flickered behind General Malgar's eyes as he watched his warriors return, not with triumphant cheers, but with quiet, uneasy glances at their human opponents. The games were only beginning, but the balance of power was already starting to shift. Frustrated by the unexpected challenges posed by Earth's athletes, General Malgar decided it was time to shift the balance back in the Ridathar's favor. The human sports had proven more demanding than anticipated, more a test of endurance and cunning than brute strength. But in Malgar's mind, true power could only be measured in life-or-death combat. It was time to introduce a game of their own. Maldax, the ultimate Ridathar sport, a brutal blend of gladiatorial combat and strategy, where death was not just possible, but expected. The Ridathar leader issued the challenge at a press conference, his voice dripping with contempt. Enough of these games of endurance and running. Let us see how you fare in a contest of survival. Maldax. A true sport, where warriors do not merely chase a ball but fight for their lives. Will your athletes still boast of their endurance when their very lives are at stake? The challenge shook Earth's leaders. Maldax was a game they had no experience with, a violent sport played with energy weapons, physical combat, and a deadly maze filled with hazards. To refuse would be seen as weakness, but to accept could mean the deaths of their best athletes. After intense deliberation, humanity accepted. But instead of sending their traditional athletes, they turned to a different breed of competitor, those used to pushing the limits of human survival. Extreme sports athletes, martial artists, and daredevils. These individuals were accustomed to high-risk environments where a single mistake could be fatal. The first event was a mix of combat and survival in the Maldax arena, a treacherous maze with towering walls, hidden traps, and dangerous terrain. Earth's participants were martial artists and survivalists, chosen not for their size or strength, but for their agility and adaptability. The Ridathar, confident in their natural superiority, sent their fiercest warriors. As the game began, the Ridathar initially dominated, using their strength to overpower the human fighters. But as the maze unfolded and its hazards became more apparent, the Ridathar's confidence began to work against them. Their size and arrogance made them reckless, triggering traps and suffering injuries they hadn't anticipated. Meanwhile, the humans moved with caution and precision, using their knowledge of survival and adaptability to outmaneuver the Ridathar. One of the Ridathar warriors fell into a spike pit, another was electrocuted by a trap. The humans, though smaller and physically weaker, began to use the environment to their advantage, turning the very dangers of the arena against their enemies. In another event, Earth introduced the Ridathar to free solo rock climbing. The Ridathar, thinking it beneath them, agreed to the challenge. They didn't anticipate the sheer mental endurance it required. One Ridathar climber fell to his death, unable to keep his grip after a long, grueling ascent. As the Ridathar lost more warriors, General Malgar's scorn turned into disbelief. They had entered these games to prove their superiority, yet here they were, losing warriors in sports they had dismissed as trivial. The humans were surviving not through strength, but through strategy and resilience, qualities the Ridathar had underestimated. The Ridathar were no longer laughing. They were bleeding. The Ridathar's losses had pushed General Malgar to his breaking point. His warriors, once invincible, had been defeated and humiliated in games they considered beneath them. Now, desperate to reclaim their honor, Malgar issued one final challenge, a no-holds-barred fight to the death, combining all the elements of Earth's most dangerous sport, mixed martial arts. There would be no arena tricks, no external dangers, just pure combat, Ridathar against humans, strength against skill. Earth's champion was a world-renowned MMA fighter, Ethan Kane, known for his adaptability and endurance in the ring. He had faced the toughest human opponents and emerged victorious time and again.
But this was no ordinary fight.
His opponent, Commander Thrak, was the Ridathar's most feared warrior, undefeated in combat, towering over Kane by nearly 3 feet and weighing twice as much. As the fight began, it was clear that Kane was at a physical disadvantage. Thrak's punches were like sledgehammers, and each blow Kane blocked or evaded felt like narrowly escaping death. The Ridathar fought with brute force, swinging with overwhelming power, aiming to crush Kane early in the match. But Kane wasn't fighting a typical opponent. He had prepared for this, studying the Ridathar's movements and recognizing that, while they were stronger, they lacked the fluidity and strategy of a seasoned human fighter. Thrak's overconfidence made him reckless, and Kane took advantage, dodging and countering with precise strikes to Thrak's weaker points, his knees, joints, and ribs. The longer the fight went on, the more the tide shifted. Thrak's frustration grew, his powerful swings becoming sloppier as exhaustion set in. Kane, battered but focused, kept his distance, using his stamina and technique to wear Thrak down. With each passing minute, the Ridathar warrior's arrogance faded, replaced by desperation. In the final moments, Kane executed a swift, calculated move, a leg sweep followed by a chokehold that Thrak couldn't break. The Ridathar's strength had failed him, and with a roar of defiance, Thrak collapsed, defeated. The arena fell silent. General Malgar, watching his greatest warrior fall to a human, clenched his fists in rage, but knew the truth. Earth had won. The Ridathar, once sure of their dominance, retreated in shame. Their arrogance had been their downfall. Humanity had proven that survival wasn't just about strength. It was about resilience, adaptability, and the unbreakable will to fight against all odds.